This time, the budget is crucial.
India is now mulling cutting income taxes for individuals earning up to 1.5 million rupees as part of its budget proposals for February. This move aims to provide relief to the middle class and stimulate consumption in response to the country's slowing economy.
The big question we're asking today, can Budget 2025 give the Indian economy the kickstart we need?
Why this Budget 2025 is very important for India? Well, if you see our GDP growth from September 2024 to December 2024, it came from 6 to 5.3, which is a bad news for Indian GDP growth, which means the purchase power for the consumers goes down. And if purchase power goes down, ultimately the sales of a companies goes down. If sales of the companies goes down, then businesses are not doing well. If businesses are not doing well, then obviously the GDP and the economy rate comes down, right?
Well, let's talk about GDP.
Concerns about India's economic slowdown are growing.
India's gross domestic product or GDP is projected to grow at 6.4% in the financial year 2024-25, marking a 4-year low.
The GDP growth in second quarter of financial year 2025 has dipped to 5.4%, the lowest ever in nearly 2 years.
The Indian economy, it appears to be slowing down. After years of rapid growth, it is hitting a speed bump. Fresh GDP numbers are out and they do not paint a good picture. In the last quarter, India grew at just 5.4%. That's a 2-year low.
So, okay, let's understand how GDP works. GDP, gross domestic product. See, there are plenty of calculations to calculate how GDP works. Okay, so but there is a simple step to understand how this GDP is actually works, which is GDP is equals to consumer plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. Okay, let's break down this. Consumption is nothing but you, me and everyone, we daily spend some money or to buy something, right? So from businesses. So this is what the consuming means. We are consuming something from some business. So we are the consumers. Investment in the sense how much money that the companies or businesses are spending inside the country, like building factories or building warehouses, which is actually providing employment to our country. So this is investment. Government spending. So how much government was spending on our people, like how much they are spending on our infra, how much they are spending on supporting to the entrepreneurs or MSMEs, or how much they are supporting for the education. All this comes under government spending. Net exports. So net exports is a simpler formula. So it is net exports divided by net imports, and a simple understanding as well. If the number comes positive, that is a good net export. If the number comes negative, that is a bad net export. So simply I can tell in this way. So if for every country, if exports was very high, that means there were more merchandise in different countries. Okay, so they were taking their products to different countries. So if you take our case, we export rice to different countries and we'll make money through that. Okay, so if we import something, like for example we are importing Chinese things, right? So that means Chinese are getting profit. That means we are paying more for the same product. Okay, so net exports should be really good number for country. So this is GDP. By calculating all of this, by how much consumers were spending, how much investment that the companies were spending in a country, and how much the government was spending on the country, plus net exports. If you take all these things, then you'll get a value. Okay, so that value is your GDP number. Okay, so that is how the GDP was measured. And if you say what is GDP? GDP is simply, we can mention in this way. It will indicate the health of the country. If you see here, after pandemic COVID-19, the global economy goes slow down. Okay, so which directly impacted on companies. Companies were investing less on the country, and if companies invest less in country, so the employment, whatever that they are creating the jobs, that goes down. If employment goes down, then automatically the purchasing power of the consumers goes down. That means middle class people, they can't purchase something without any salary or something. How can they even purchase something, right? So purchasing power goes down. If this is very clear for you, this brings to the next topic that is very important. So why government want to cut taxes on middle class?
Now, whether it is the United States or Europe or China or even India, it is actually the middle class that's the backbone of any country's economy.
Rising costs, stubborn inflation, and soaring taxes. India's middle class is feeling the pinch like never before. Well, as Budget 2025 looms, the nation's backbone demands an overhaul to ease their financial burdens.
The big question today is how much trouble is the Indian economy actually in?
There are a few signs of distress. For starters, wages in urban India have contracted. This impacts the middle class directly. Their incomes are shrinking and it's showing in consumer spending. Even on items like food, the middle class is cutting back. Consumer spending fell to a 2-year low this month.
The shrinking middle class is hurting sales.
Do you know, in any country, middle class called as backbone of the country. If you see here, like in our country, we divide this economy into 3 different tiers. So tier 1, those are top wealthier people, and then tier 2, middle class people, and tier 3, that is lower class people. Okay, so these are the 3 tiers which businesses usually count. If you see, the major contributor for our country, not only our country, for any country, the major contributor for economy is tier 2, that is middle class. See, middle class are majorly involved into all the social activities. They were into all prestigious things, like if someone have a house, we need to have a house. If someone having a car, we need car for us. So middle class is that particular area which is having pressure from society. Okay, so these people spend more if you compare to the tier 1 or tier 3. Why? If you see tier 1 people, they doesn't care about their prestigious things or something like that. And if you see tier 3, the lower class people, they doesn't even care because they looks like that, right? But middle class having huge pressure from the society. This is a widely common known thing, right? But the very important thing from the middle class, these are the highest taxpayers, which ultimately favors the government. You know how government runs, so they need to collect the tax and they need to spend on the country, right? So middle class is a backbone for our country. Now you got to know how much important that Indian middle class is for Indian economy. Here, 2 very important things that are actually affecting Indian middle class these days, which actually leads to middle class to survive hard, and also leading most of the middle class converting into the tier 3, that means lower class. So what are those 2 things? That unemployment and taxes on salaries. If you see from 2021 to 2023, the unemployment rate was really high. That means there is no employment for plenty of our freshers. But now if you see from 2024-2025, the employment rate was actually growing good. Okay, so if you don't watch our video, I made one of the video how actually the unemployment was affecting our country. Go watch that. If you see in our new tax regime, the average person paying 36.4% of taxes on their salaries every month, which is little bad, right? And if this is a fire, the petrol for this was food inflation. Because of global economy slowdown and plenty of other effects, the food inflation have grown and touched peak in the recent days, which leads the raising prices of daily utilities like edible oil or vegetables or any food item related to food, which make middle class to survive little harder in this situation. If you see, the average middle class salary is range between 20k to 25k. Do you know that? And how can they even tackle this food inflation? That brings us to the next important aspect, that is taking loans. Due to this food inflation, middle class people are actually taking credit from banks, and they are taking personal loans, and very importantly, they are taking collateral loans against the gold to survive this situation.
Rising debt is making things worse.
As defaults rise, the middle class faces the dual burden of financial and emotional distress. Distressing signs are emerging as gold loans rapidly increase.
More families are taking on loans, leaving them with less money to spend.
Increasingly taking loans against the yellow metal to meet household, medical or educational expenses. Commercial banks saw a staggering 62% rise, while NBFCs reported a 24% surge in defaults.
Do you know how banks make money? So there are plenty of different methods that banks make money, but one of the important method that banks always used to do that they'll lend money to the consumers and they'll give some interest rate on that principal and they collect with the interest. That is a very important source of income for the bank, right? If you see from April 2024, the growth of personal loans and credit taking goes down. Okay, the real problem is not the growth of personal loans or the credit from the bank. The real problem is the defaulting of the loans from the people. If you see the chart here, the defaults are growing rapidly from June of 2024. Now middle class is getting poor and they are getting bankrupt, which ultimately leads to our Indian economy. If this continues like this, so middle class don't have any money and they lose their purchasing power, and ultimately they're not unable to purchase any products, which reduces the sales of the companies. And if the sales was reduced, obviously the business goes down, and which results in our Indian economy, right? This brings to the very, very important topic, what government is going to do about this.
Budget 2025 right around the corner. There's one question on everyone's mind. Will this finally be the year salaried individuals get some much needed income tax relief?
The government is examining the possibility of reducing tax rates for income up to 10 lakh rupees.
New tax regime more attractive, more incentivize, give more benefit to especially the salaried class and the middle class.
Which government is planning to modify the new tax regime which was introduced in 2020, because this is a very major concern for middle class. And if this situation continues, if the budget is not very good, these are the expectations what you have seen. If this not going to happen and there is no tax cut on salaries and there is no employment creation, that means there is no job opportunities or anything, Indian middle class is going to shrink very hard. And if you think this is a very little problem, no, it was not. This looks minor for now, but it will keep a really big dent if we ignore it now, because in this raising economy and raising population, the taking more taxes on the people, and also there is no employment creation in the country, which leads to the bad GDP and bad growth of Indian economy, and which might get us country into the poor situation. Thank you for watching. I'm Rutvik signing off. Please make sure to subscribe and like the video.